Rembrandt van Rijn, master of light and shadow, techniques, recipes, and stylistic secrets. Rembrandt Harmenszoon van Rijn, 1606 to 1669, a master of the Dutch Golden Age, is celebrated for his remarkable ability to depict light and shadow, particularly in portraiture. His techniques in manipulating chiaroscuro, the contrast between light and dark, were groundbreaking. His work combines intricate detail with expressive, painterly brushstrokes that bring his subjects to life in a way that few artists of his time could achieve. Understanding the methods, recipes, and tricks Rembrandt used requires a deep dive into his materials, approaches, and artistry. This narrative is sponsored by Polly Speaks For You. The creator of Polly Speaks For You has always been passionate about empowering individuals, especially those with disabilities or learning challenges, through text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You isn't just a tool. It's a bridge for people to communicate and interact with the world in a meaningful way. By blending historical storytelling with cutting-edge tech, the creator showcases how powerful a voice can be, whether telling your own story or preserving history. So hit that like, share, and subscribe button and help this channel grow. Now back to the story. 1. Use of light. The chiaroscuro effect. The hallmark of Rembrandt's work was his use of chiaroscuro, which he mastered to create dramatic tension and emotional depth. This technique is about more than simply depicting shadows. It's about using light as a storytelling device. He often placed a single light source, usually imagined as coming from above or to the side, illuminating the subject's face and leaving the background in relative darkness. This contrast allowed him to focus the viewer's attention on specific elements of the composition while creating an ethereal, almost spiritual quality in his figures. Tips for achieving Rembrandt's light. Single light source. Rembrandt commonly used one strong light source, often positioned high, and to one side of the figure. This produced a three-dimensional effect and highlighted facial features dramatically. Reflective light. To achieve reflective light, where areas and shadows still seem illuminated, Rembrandt carefully modulated midtones. For instance, a face might be lit from one side, while the shadowed side would still receive a soft, reflected light bouncing off the surroundings or clothing. This created the illusion of depth without making the shadowed areas appear flat. Rembrandt triangle. One of the most well-known lighting setups in portraiture, named after Rembrandt, involves a small triangle of light appearing on the cheek of the subject opposite the light source. This happens when light falls from above at about a 45-degree angle, leaving a shadow under the nose and eye socket, with a triangle of light on the cheek below the eye. 2. Glazing techniques and recipes. Rembrandt's paintings have a luminous quality that stems from his mastery of glazing techniques. Glazing involves applying thin, translucent layers of paint over dried underpainting, allowing light to pass through the layers and creating a sense of depth and glow. Rembrandt's recipe for glazing. Underpainting. He began with a monochromatic underpainting, typically using a warm brown or gray tone, often burnt umber or sienna, to sketch out the composition and establish the light and dark values. A layering. Once the underpainting dried, Rembrandt applied layers of translucent oil, paint mixed with a medium like linseed oil or walnut oil. Each layer was allowed to dry before the next was applied, creating a complex interplay of colors and light. He often used reds, yellows, and earth tones in thin glazes to give skin a warm, lifelike quality. Scumbling. To achieve his textured highlights, Rembrandt employed a technique called scumbling. He would drag a nearly dry brush lightly over the surface of the painting, applying a thin, opaque layer of paint that allowed the underlying layers to peek through. This technique was often used in the highlights of skin or fabrics to create a reflective, luminous effect. Mediums and pigments. A linseed oil and resin mixtures. Rembrandt's mediums were likely mixtures of linseed oil and natural resins, such as damar or mastic, which increased the translucency of the paint and its ability to be manipulated on the canvas. Pigments. His palette was composed of earth tones and muted colors such as ochre, sienna, lead white, and bone black. He also used rich, deep reds, like vermilion, and blues, like ultramarine or smalt. in small doses, often as glazes to add richness and vibrancy to shadows and flesh tones. 3. Brushwork and texture. Rembrandt was a master of varied textures, from the smoothness of skin to the roughness of fur, fabric, or hair. His brushwork ranged from painstaking detail to expressive, thick impasto. Techniques for texture. Fine detail versus loose brushwork. In areas like the eyes or hands, Rembrandt's brushwork was fine and controlled. However, in less important areas of the composition, such as clothing or backgrounds, he allowed for looser, more expressive brushstrokes. These bold, confident strokes give his paintings energy and movement. Impasto. Rembrandt applied thick layers of paint, impasto, in select areas, particularly in highlights. This thick application of paint not only caught the light in a literal sense, creating a three-dimensional effect, but it also added visual interest. Impasto was used to emphasize textures like fur, jewelry, or the folds of a rich velvet garment. Palette knife work. Evidence suggests that Rembrandt sometimes used a palette knife to spread paint in broad, textured strokes, particularly in backgrounds or areas where texture was more important than fine detail. This gave the paint surface a rich, dynamic quality. 4. Mastery of portraiture, capturing emotion and humanity. Rembrandt's portraits are renowned for their psychological depth. He could capture the subtle expressions that reveal the inner life of his subjects, and he often chose to depict older, weathered faces, which allowed him to explore texture and emotion. Tricks for emotional depth in portraiture. Focus on eyes and hands. Rembrandt believed that the eyes were the windows to the soul. In his portraits, the eyes are usually the most detailed and illuminated feature, drawing the viewer into the emotional world of the subject. The hands, often rendered in exquisite detail, are another focal point, suggesting the character's inner strength, wisdom, or fragility. Uneven lighting. Rembrandt often left parts of his figures in shadow, which not only added drama, but also focused the viewer's attention on the most expressive areas of the portrait, usually the face and hands. This selective illumination contributes to the sense of mystery and psychological depth in his work. 5. Materials and tools. Rembrandt worked with traditional oil paints, prepared using natural pigments and oils. His understanding of the physical properties of these materials allowed him to push the boundaries of oil painting. Tools and materials Rembrandt used. Canvas and panels. Rembrandt painted on both canvas and wood panels, though many of his earlier works were executed on oak panels. He prepared these surfaces with a layer of gesso or lead white primer to create a smooth, reflective base. Brushes. He used a variety of brushes, from fine, sable brushes for detail to broader, hoghair brushes for thicker applications of paint. The variation in brush size and type allowed him to switch between smooth, detailed rendering and looser, more expressive strokes. Grounds and preparations. The grounds he used, the preparatory layers applied to the canvas or panel, were often a warm tone, such as reddish or brownish hues. This warm ground helped to give his works their rich, earthy tonalities, and it subtly peeked through the layers of paint, enhancing the overall depth and warmth. In closing, Rembrandt's genius lay not only in his technical skill, but in his ability to marry technique with profound emotional depth. His mastery of light and shadow, his nuanced textures, and his bold use of materials allowed him to create works that seem alive with light and emotion. For artists seeking to emulate Rembrandt's style, the key lies in understanding the delicate interplay of light, shadow, and reflective surfaces, as well as learning to manipulate oil paints through glazing, scumbling, and impasto to create a luminous, textured surface. By studying Rembrandt's methods, recipes, and tricks, modern artists can gain insight into the timeless appeal of his works. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software, visit www.polispeaks4u.co.za and support this meaningful dyslexic initiative. Thank you for watching.